Thank you for joining me on the Way Up podcast with your host, Geoff Knoll. In this week's episode, I have a conversation with Natalie Chrzanowska, who's been studying hospitality management and worked in that field. She is transitioning her studies into communication science at the University of Amsterdam and pursuing a career in public relations and advertising. The Way Up podcast is sponsored by me. I'm a real estate broker in the state of Missouri, and I believe that this message is worth my investment. Stay with us till the end. You won't be disappointed. Hey, I am excited to be here with my friend Natalie Chrzanowska. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, perfect. She's here all the way from the Netherlands. Natalie was a foreign exchange student with my in-laws, and so we got to know her really well. She's in a transition in her life right now. So she came here to spend a little over a month with my family. So super excited to have her. She's doing some really exciting things in her life. And I would just want you to share a little bit about what you're doing, what your plans are, what you've been going to school for.
Yeah, so currently I'm not doing a whole lot, but until recently I was in school for hospitality management. I went there for 2 years. So I did my first year, then I went on internship to Dubai, working a couple side jobs as well. And recently I've had these eye-openers that this is not necessarily what I want to do. I would really like to get into public relations and advertising. And I was getting a little of that in the school that I was at, but not enough. So I'm going to start in September. I'm going to start at the University of Amsterdam. And there I'm going to be studying communication science.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Super cool.
And that's why I had all of this kind of free time on my hands, and I thought it was a perfect time to come and visit finally.
Yep, and we've been planning on going over and visiting you at some point. Yeah, that's going to happen still.
That's going to happen. That's a must.
Yeah, for sure, because I want to go over there. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
But we went for a run.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Indeed.
2 days ago. 3 days ago, I don't know, last week maybe?
Yeah, last week.
We went on a run.
3 days ago, I guess.
And we were talking about just living in the present, and you brought something up. I wanted you to share the quote that you said.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So the quote, and I can't say who said it first. I don't remember where I heard it. But what they mentioned was, if you're depressed, you're living in the past, and if you're stressed or anxious, you're living in the future, and if you're at peace, you're living in the present.
Yeah.
Because the present is a present. That's usually what they say, right?
It's a gift.
It's a gift, yeah. So I do know that this is like usually kind of the starting point that they put into those spiritual enlightenment, self-guiding books. There's this one book which I find everyone should read at least once in their lifetime. It's called The Power of Now. It's by Eckhart Tolle. I'm really hoping I'm pronouncing that right. But I read that book, I think, maybe now like 3 years ago. 3 years ago, because I read it right after I came back from my exchange year. Which is almost 4 years ago. And it was, COVID, lockdown, and I guess everyone started working on their mental health during that time. Mm-hmm. And this book was, at the time when I was reading it, I do remember thinking like, wow, I really know that what they're saying in here is like true, and it's probably like a very crucial way of looking or how you should view things. But I was also not entirely ready to be like fully spiritually enlightened. I don't know, have you ever heard of the book?
I have heard of it. I've never read it.
Yeah, no, you should definitely.
The Power of Now.
The Power of Now.
I'm gonna look it up.
because it's I don't know, it makes you really look at things different, you know? It makes you, yeah, suddenly you start thinking and realizing all of these things that you haven't really realized before, you know? Sometimes you just need to read it and then you catch yourself doing it and then you think back about what you read and then you're like, oh shit, yeah.
Well, it raises awareness.
Yeah, it raises
So
awareness.
you read something and now that it's
True.
brought to your attention, you notice things whenever it happens.
Yeah, and I must say, I'm not a big reader. Like, I really need to push myself to read anything. I wish I loved reading, because I think reading is so important. I think why go a lifetime and make those mistakes yourself and just, take such a long time if you can just read it in a book. People that have done it have gone through it and they just put all of those highlights and the important lessons that they've learned in one of these little books, and all you have to do is read it, but then most people choose not to.
So that's something I've had to force myself to do.
Yeah, I also really
I
forced
was
myself.
not a reader whatsoever. In fact, it would make my brain hurt.
Oh, really?
When
to
I was
focus.
when I was a kid and we did Book It, which to all my teachers, I lied about some of those books. I didn't read all those
me too.
books.
I also had to read
But
10
I got the
books.
free
I
little
bullshitted all of
pizza
it.
because I did the Book It, and I was able to know just enough for the report.
Yeah.
But I do love reading now, but it's because I've forced myself to do it, and I don't do it every day like I would love to.
Yeah.
But most days I get up and I'm like, okay, I'm going to, because I know that I'm going to get value from it, and every day that I
True.
do, even if it's not everything, sometimes you're just reading and it could put you right back to sleep. It's probably not the right book.
True.
If it's that boring, that's not the book for you.
True.
Not saying that there's nothing good in it, but every time I pick up something, if I don't get something out of it, I don't want to spend days just reading something just to say that I read it. I want to be pulling value from it.
Yeah, I must say, I'm still on that journey of learning how to really consistently read those books. I really want to, and I found an author that I just love, and it's because one book fanatic, he explained to me, well, he's not really a writer, he's a blogger, but it's Mark Manson, which he wrote The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Great book. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
And I love that book too.
It was a good book.
I think it's one of my favorites, but I met this guy, which was really funny. It was in a bookstore, and he just noticed that I was looking at the self-development books. And this is the great thing that I find with self-development books. If you just grab a self-development book and you start reading it somewhere in public, for sure, if someone is also on their journey of, self-development, mental awareness, they will for sure say something
They're going
to
to point
you
it out
about it. Yeah, I've met some amazing people while I was reading The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, which at this point is kind of the typical, you're not very special when you've read it, but...
Hey, I thought there was a lot of good insights in that book.
There's a lot. No, I'm not degrading the book at all. I love it. But, it is a book that a lot of people have read already. But still, I find that everyone should read it, though. That guy kind of told me that Mark Manson, the way he writes books is really just for people with a short attention span. So he puts all of that, very kind of concentrated in a way that it's just, I don't know, but I also find that it's just funny. I find that what he writes is just, I don't know, the way of thinking. He has this kind of distance. He doesn't take himself too seriously, which I love. I feel like if I would ever try to attempt to write a book, I would probably do it in the way he kind of did it, because it feels more like he's just sharing his thoughts and sharing just the good stories. It's interesting, it's funny, it has a message in it. I cannot talk enough about how much I love his books.
I didn't read it. I listened to that one on an audiobook.
Oh, you listened to it?
But his audiobook, he narrates it. And I think when authors narrate their own audiobook,
oh yeah, that's different.
It's way better. It's way better than and for some reason, if anybody from Audible ever listens to this,
Yeah.
British people talking, just reading. I
You
can't.
can't? Oh
No.
no. I was gonna say it relaxes me and I love it.
Unless it's the author and they're speaking with some real conviction. I think I like the author writing or doing the narration, because nobody's going to speak that the way that they meant it as
Yeah,
much
true.
as they will.
But if a British author just reads his own book, you'll still.
Then I think it would be okay.
You think so?
I just don't know if I've read anything
I
written
think
by...
maybe because you're not used to, because I mean,
It
in
could
your
be 'cause
head,
it sounds-
you're probably your voice in your head is American, you know. So you're probably
I know, but if I read a book, say I'm reading anybody that I've heard them speak, like
Yeah.
a lot of authors, I've never heard them talk. But
Yeah, true.
if they're on the internet, I read Will Smith's book.
Yeah, you have.
It was actually really good.
What is it called? Do
Um,
you remember?
I don't remember.
But is it like an autobiography
It's
about
it's
his
really him
life?
talking about his life.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Will Smith. I'm gonna look it up and put it in the link.
Yeah,
Because
yep.
I don't remember, but it was really good. I listened to his audiobook, but it's him, and it just feels like him talking to you.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
like I'm taking in a book. Lots
Yeah.
of good information in it, but then you listen to something that somebody else just submitted for somebody to put in their audio.
Yeah.
They're not reading that with the same feeling. It's just somebody reading a book, and that's
Mm-hmm.
boring.
True. Not true. Yeah, I'm not that big of audio. In general, I think that might be even more difficult for me. I don't know. I just, somehow I always just put on a song or something and I prefer that. But I should, yeah, it's something you should push yourself
Well, you
to do.
should
Like
try some different
podcasts
ones.
more,
Try some
yeah.
different ones, because
And see which one you
some people are like the Mark Manson. He narrated that book, and it was fantastic. Imagine his personality that
Yeah.
you read
Oh.
coming out.
Oh, I want to do
from
that. I think
him.
I'm gonna read
It's
it again.
fantastic.
I think
have
next
the
time I'm
audiobook.
gonna. Oh,
I
I would
have
love
it.
to listen to it instead of reading it. But have you
You
read?
should.
Have you read the second book, which is Everything is Fucked? Have you read that one?
I haven't read that one.
So I have it upstairs. I'm halfway or over. I think more than halfway.
Well, you're gonna have to race through it
So
because you leave
yeah,
in
so
April.
that you.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
And I think I love that one even more.
Really?
I must say that I do. Yep, for sure. Yeah,
Perfect.
he's just, I don't know, he's great. I love his way of seeing things, and pretty much, I think overall almost everything I just totally agree with. It's like I see it exactly the same way he does. Mm-hmm. And it's so nice to kind of we talked about it earlier, how nice it is to kind of relate, or you can
Well, and
get
hearing
understood.
different perspectives, not saying that it's not the way that you think,
Yeah.
but hearing somebody else say it makes you, whenever you can relate to, you're like, okay, I don't know that I could have put it in words that way, but that is how I feel about this.
Yeah.
And I get that from the first book. I felt that a lot. It was like, dang, this
Yeah.
guy's kind of awesome.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be the way, whenever I was hearing, I don't even remember what I think the first chapter of his first book says, don't try. Like, that's the name of the chapter.
Oh, yeah?
Don't try. And I'm like, I don't know that this book's for me. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think I can relate to this. And he starts talking and going into detail, and you're like, okay, okay, I'm on board.
Yeah.
So,
And see,
interesting.
Mark Manson, what he does, well, we just talked about it earlier. I feel like he does complain, or he has this, like he's, he doesn't take himself too seriously, or the world, or people. So, he can joke about things, and I feel like he's just very relatable, or like, he's just, I don't know, human. He's not some Superman or something, and he
Right.
puts it down to what it is. And I feel like with him, you would be able to actually, that question about if you could have dinner with anyone in the world, who would you have dinner with? For me, it would be probably him. I wonder how he is. These type of people, you just want to feel their kind of energy, or how they are in person,
Right.
You wonder how that would be, what type of conversations you could have with that person. But I'm sure he's not always so idealistic. I'm sure that he's just such a down-to-earth guy that he can complain or bitch about anything, and just, in a non-toxic way, you can just, you know, kind of relate to him or talk with him about anything.
Yeah,
Right?
I agree. So back to the first thing we talked about was the living in the present, being in the moment.
Oh, yeah.
And you had mentioned when we were running, people being on vacation or on holiday, and they are worried about all the crap that they've got going on at work that they need to be doing, that they're not doing. And then when they're at work, they're like, man, I wish I was at the beach. I wish I was doing these things and living in that moment that I wasn't.
Yeah.
So do you have any experience that you'd like to talk about where that was an issue, and what have you done to get yourself back on track?
That's a hard one. If you have to remember something. I know this in general, this kind of escaping what is going on right now in front of you, I guess everyone does it. Everyone is always somewhere thinking about, hey, what it is, over there. So if you're at work, you're thinking about holiday. When you're at holiday, you're thinking about work. I guess even now that, for example, I'm here in the USA, I'm thinking sometimes about, back home, which I'm so happy and grateful to be here. But then at the same time, so you catch yourself sometimes thinking like, oh wow, I kind of miss sometimes having my independence, having my car, having my own schedule, having a job to go to, having college to do, having those tasks and kind of life of my own, right now, because I'm kind of transitioning and changing everything up. Currently, I don't really have that. So even if I would go back, I wouldn't have it. But you're always thinking about somewhere else. And I guess it's just important to at least be aware of it and catch yourself doing it, because people get so, I don't know, so ahead of themselves. They're, what we said, if you're so stressed and so anxious, it's because you're not, your mind is in the future and not where you're at right now, It's like your mind and body are completely somewhere in different places, because you're already getting ahead of yourself and thinking of all the possible things that could be, whereas you don't really know. You can say, oh, I'm sure of it, but you can't be 100% sure of it, because you're not in the future yet. You really don't know what will be tomorrow, what will be in a month, in a year, you have no clue.
So do you have anything that you do to get yourself centered and reel yourself back into the present? Do you ever meditate or?
I do. I try to meditate, which at first was really hard for me. I have ADD, so I'm super busy in my head all the time. Which the difference of ADHD and ADD is that ADHD you can tell by the person. They're very jumpy. And with ADD, you can't really tell. That's kind of also the difference. It's more in your mind with stuff, that it can be racing at times, and you're just, kind of dreamy or not where you are right now. That's kind of a characteristic of having that. So I must say, I'm not the best example, but I try as much as I can, and I do try to think, hey, breathe, be in the moment.
Breathing techniques.
Yeah. And honestly, that's what meditating is, It's actually focusing on breathing. It's focusing on...
Yeah.
It's not as...
Just
It's pretty easy.
Focusing on less, actually.
Yeah. And people even forget that, it's hard that you forget to do the thing that we do to live, breathe. Sometimes we get
it's automatic, so we don't have to think about it, but making that be the only thought is that is right now. That's every moment is we're breathing. So I experience the same thing when I meditate, and I wouldn't say that I have ADD, but when I'm meditating, sometimes I feel like maybe I do, just because it's work. It is a challenge to make yourself calm. And I've listened to a lot of the guided meditations on YouTube.
Yeah, you need to have a guided one. I mean, without it, I'm
It
also,
helps.
yeah, it's more
But a
difficult.
lot of them will say, if you have a thought, it's okay.
Yeah.
Acknowledge it
Acknowledge it, let it go.
and let it go.
Yeah.
Acknowledge it, be grateful for whatever it is, and then dismiss it and just back to your breathing, back to your focus on whatever your mantra of,
Yeah.
you know,
It's funny
peace,
that
kuspraba. It feels cheesy too.
Yeah, yeah.
It feels cheesy, so people have a hard time doing it. But it does make a huge difference when you actually, even if you can get in a solid 5 minutes.
True.
I'm like, dang, that's kind of
true.
awesome.
Yeah, and it's funny that kind of it's the easiest thing that you can do, breathe, and supposedly people are telling us we're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
You know, you can do that wrong.
You don't have to be in
if you could-
shape. You don't have to. You don't have to be physically able to do anything. You
Yeah.
can sit there and just breathe.
Yeah. I would love to go to like a real retreat in like Thailand and do the whole, you know, yoga and breathing exercises. It's called Ayurveda. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but
Verdi?
Ayurveda. You know what I'm talking
I
about?
have no idea.
Shit, we have to edit this out.
It's okay.
But yeah, Ayurveda, I'm pretty sure. But those are also things that are good for you from the inside. And there are these type of retreats that, you know, they create even a meal plan and everything for you, specifically for you. And, you know, you're supposed to kind of heal from the inside and outside and come back like a newborn from it. So that's one of the things on my bucket list that, wow, once in my life I would love to do something like that, you know, which yeah.
That would be super cool to be extremely dialed in on your diet to
Yeah.
where you are actually getting the nutrients exactly what you need.
Yeah.
Which I don't know how they can do that without doing like
Yeah.
blood panel tests and knowing what you actually need. But if they,
Yeah, I'm not sure
That's
what they do
interesting.
for it, but we would have to research that and do do a podcast on that
that
one.
would be interesting.
But yeah, or just getting more into the whole Buddhism. I would love to know more about Buddhism. I don't know. I should research that more. But Buddhism, one of the things that I know of Buddhism, which a friend told me about, she told me about that in real, like people that practice Buddhism over there, they also believe that, for example, the homeless people, because they believe in reincarnation and all these things, you know, and people that are homeless over there, they are not mad or they're at peace with being homeless because they believe that they've done something bad in the past, you know, so their soul, so they're reincarnated in this new body and this is what they deserve. So they're at peace with being on the streets, with being, because they believe that, you know, they've done something bad in the past and that's why they've come back in this form. And they're completely at peace with being on the streets.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Which I was like, wow, that's incredible. You know, you're just like accepting your fate, I guess. Accepting just also being in the present, you know.
And I don't know. I feel like, and you can't know, I can't judge somebody else for not living in their shoes or you know, seeing things from their perspective. But I wonder, what if they believed something differently about themselves? What if they had a belief that they were actually meant to cure cancer, or they were meant to do something really big, and that drove them to not be homeless and to be able to not only take care of themselves, but contribute in a really big way?
Well, I think actually the way that they're thinking, I think it's good because even people that aren't homeless, not everyone is driven. Not everyone has that in them that they're, you know, trying to be better. They're just, as we say, some people are just, you know, surviving and some people are actually living, you know? Like sometimes you see some people and you think, what's your purpose? You know, which is really bad to say, but you know what I mean. Like they're not really, not everyone feels the need to. So, I mean, I feel like there always will be homeless people. There always will be, you know, we can't all be, you know.
Do you believe that everybody has a purpose in life?
I believe that I believe that many people don't know their purpose. They're in search.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people that don't have any idea, and there's a lot of people that maybe aren't even looking for their purpose. They're not searching.
Yeah, and this is pretty sad, though.
It is sad, especially whenever you see potential in other people. When you can see that this person is, you know, maybe they're really good with kids. Maybe they'd be a really good teacher. Maybe they would be an incredible something. They would be good at something, but they don't see that potential in themselves, and maybe they didn't have anybody that ever, you know, let them know that I think you'd be good at that.
But there's just so much that you can do. It's up to the person itself. You know, we're always.
You can't force anybody to do anything. Like
Yeah.
you can't force a will onto somebody to want to do better for themselves. They
Yeah.
have to want it themselves.
Yeah.
100%.
And that's how we also say, like, no one will ever change for anyone or anything. It's really, you know, whenever they are ready, they will change. And then it might look that, you know, the person that they're with at that moment, you know, they might have made some, you know, comments or they given them some advices that help them come to a certain point. But in the end, it will always be that that person was just mentally ready to make the change, because they'll never change if they're not ready themselves. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's good that we have, of course, we said it before too, that it would be boring if everyone was the same and
Yeah,
everyone would agree to everything.
you
You
wanna
know, you
have-
should have differences in the world, obviously, but
different perspectives and different viewpoints.
absolutely.
It's helpful to hear opposing sides so that you can, you know, especially if you have an open mind.
Yep.
People that have drastically opposing opinions, but they refuse to listen to anyone else, that doesn't do anybody any good either.
Yeah.
You have to be somewhat open-minded to
Yeah.
possibility of change.
Yep.
That maybe you don't know everything exactly 100%.
Would you say people are open-minded here?
Not everybody.
Not
I would
everybody,
say not, and that's everywhere.
That's everywhere.
That is not. That's not a specific to this place.
Yeah.
Some people are very open-minded.
Yeah. I think you'll
And
have that everywhere.
I think that's
yeah.
everywhere.
That
There's
is
some
everywhere,
are,
true.
some are not.
Yep. Definitely.
I can think of people in my life on both sides of the fence of that. So
Yeah. No, I agree. Open-mindedness is,
So do you have anything that you would recommend for somebody who has trouble on focusing on in the moment? Because everybody worries about the past. Everybody worries about the future. Everybody has regrets.
Yeah.
But what would you recommend for somebody to do that struggles with that often?
Oh gosh. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so hard to say. Usually, you know what? Sometimes everyone forgets something. Sometimes you can, you know, it's easy to say now, and then myself, you'll catch me doing the same thing. And then sometimes you need someone to tell you again, like, hey,
I
what
go
did
through it
you
all the
say
time
last
too.
week?
I go through it all the time too. But it's the same thing as when you read it in a book.
Yeah.
When you raise your awareness, and when you encounter it next time, you're going to be like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And then you can course correct and get out of it sooner.
Yep. Well, there's the basic, of course, of always, you know, and you've probably everyone heard it 1,000 times, but if you're getting too far ahead of yourself or you're worrying too much, you know, think about, hey, will it matter in, you know, a couple of days? Will it matter in a couple of weeks? Will it matter in a couple of months? Usually the answer is no. when you're thinking about too much of the past, it's like, is there anything you can do about it now? Then do it. If you can't do anything about it, then just wait it out. Patience, I guess, which I'm really impatient. I'm the worst person, and I have to be reminded of something sometimes, of like, hey, just, wait it out or let it go. But yeah, and sometimes it's good to have a friend around that will tell you, straight up, like, hey, you gotta.
You need to have
quit it
somebody
right now.
close that will be real with you and
Yeah.
tell you what you actually need to
Yeah.
hear and not what you want to hear.
And I was surprised once, and that's the good thing about having people around you that will actually truly listen to what you're saying, because most people are always thinking about the next thing they'll say, and they're not truly, everyone is focused on themselves, basically. Usually it is that way, and not always on even what the person to you is really saying. They're hearing but not actually listening. But one of my friends, I remember seeing something and sharing it with her, which was about emotions and how sometimes we get in this domino effect, or in this circle of, you get a certain emotion, like you start feeling sad, and then you start questioning, like, hey, why am I feeling sad? Why, I did, it's a good day. Well, why am I feeling this way? And you start questioning it. You start putting reason to it, like, oh, I'm sad because this happened, And this is actually making it way worse. And then you get in this circle of sadness or whatever. Whereas if you just sometimes let it be what it is, just an emotion, it comes and goes, Even happiness, it comes and goes. Sometimes you'll be super happy and don't even, question it that much. Just really enjoy it. And when you're sad, don't question that too much. Don't try to put reason to everything,
Just live in the moment
it's a
and
feeling.
let the feeling come and go.
Yep.
It's awesome.
And I was telling her that, and then a day after or 2 days after, I came back from work, and then I started talking to her about this and that, and I probably was crying. I'm a crier. I don't remember anymore what it was about even. That means, that wasn't that significant actually. But then she told me, hey, what did you tell me a couple days ago? It's a feeling. Just let it be what it is. Don't question it too much right now why you're feeling this way. Just feel it, embrace it, I guess, and just let it, go. Which we even talked about earlier. When you're sad, you want to listen to sad music, whereas, just, it's a feeling, let it go. Don't try to dive into that sadness even more.
You don't want to hang out there.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel something, experiencing it, but you don't want to dwell on it.
But also the way around, also the other way around, you shouldn't push too hard when you're feeling sad. Don't push too hard to make you feel good, It's, sometimes it's all right to just let it be what it is for a little bit, If you're trying too hard, like, oh, I'm sad, oh, I need to do this and this and this, let's watch this, let's, make myself happy, and it probably won't work for, if you're in that moment that you just have to feel it for a little bit, and it will pass everything. Tom Hanks once said in an interview, I believe, they asked if there's one thing that you can share or something. He says, if you're on top of the world, you think you know everything, you've got everything figured out, this shall pass, If you feel, horrible, this too shall pass. And he was just continuing with all of these things. And it's just as simple as that.
Yeah. Life is made up of several moments.
Yeah.
It's not one thing is good or one thing is bad. We have a lifetime of moments.
Yep. True. Yep. And about this, you also hear a lot of things, because people are saying they're working or striving towards it, and they're saying, oh, then I'll be happy, or this is, whereas, happiness isn't really a place or something. It's not a destination. Yeah. It's the journey, ups and downs.
It's the story of multimillionaires that are just disgusted with
Yeah.
lots of things in their life that thought the money would buy them happiness, but it doesn't.
True.
Not
true.
saying it's not cool to be able to
Yeah.
not worry about paying bills,
But the same thing, you know.
there's a lot of
The
broke
rich
people
have
that
a lot
are
of problems that will come
that are
up then.
happy.
If you're broke, there's a lot of problems that you'll have then.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one really doesn't solve the other because
Yeah,
you'll
money-
always have
money
problems. You'll
doesn't
always
fix
have things.
that. Yep.
You know, it's just part of it all. So that's what they say life is really about. You know, about having those just ups and downs, those moments, all collectively is just, you know.
Well, I think if you can keep a positive perspective in whatever situation you're in, if you can look for things that you can be grateful for, it's hard to feel really defeated if you are looking at all the things that you have that
Yep.
you are grateful for, that have made your life better.
Which I know now that is also sometimes, as I said, sometimes you forget or you kind of lose yourself in that moment. You know, I've always, no, well, always, since recent years, I've also been really, you know, kind of educating myself, trying to build this mental awareness. I guess also because of the times we're in, it's like trending right now to you know, kind of educate yourself on all of that. Everyone is suddenly into it, whereas, you know, the older generation is calling this generation like, you know, wussies or pussies or whatever, because they're like, hey, you know, we had war, we had, you know, all of this, we had to walk to school bare feet or whatever, you know. Whereas here, and then they say like, oh, now boys need to go to therapists and they cry and they do all these things. But I find that makes you even stronger, you know, that we have this like mental awareness that we're building. But there are moments that you'll completely also forget all of the things that you know, you really lose yourself. And I thought, oh, impossible. If I would be in a really bad spot, I know that, you know, I know certain things and it's impossible for me to be that bad or this low, which ended up not being true. I had this one period that out of the blue, I collapsed and I started, you know, really bawling my eyes out, crying, which I never knew where that came from. But, you know, that was after a few drinks, so I thought, oh, that's just the liquor in
alcohol
me, you
coming
know,
out.
that's, yeah, how some people get emotional or whatever. But then I woke up crying and having also dried up tears from crying while I was sleeping even, you know. I was like, what's going on? And then I had to stay home that night or that day. The next day, same thing. And I was like, at some point, I think in the fourth day where I was literally all day long crying, I was like, there must be something wrong with my brain because this is not who I am, you know, where's this coming from? And then I started having this panic attacks and these anxiety attacks where, you know, everyone is experiencing it different. For me, it was really like as if my soul left like my body. I was seeing everything from like up. I felt like I was just, it was just, I don't know, it was very weird. And some people are, you know, when they have panic attacks, they're actually thinking that they're dying, you know, they're having this kind of, they feel like they're having a stroke, or they feel like it's you know, it's different for everyone. For me, I was just like, all like pictures were flashing by of all of bad memories that I had, or all of kind of things. And I had to go to therapy, I had to have, you know, medication and stuff, because I was not capable of doing anything during the day, you know. I was just in bed crying, not even being able to eating and crying. And it was just I was convinced I had like a tumor in my brain, because I was like, well, there has to be something that's making me feel like this, because I'm mentally aware usually, you know, I know about all these things, but then I was completely lost. And then I had to go into therapy, and I learned a lot there, but I've noticed that in the moments that I was good, or I was feeling kind of myself again, every question that I asked myself, I kind of had an answer to. I wasn't that lost anymore. But whereas when I was in a bad place, everything seemed unsolvable. everything seemed like, no, but there's no other answer, you know? And then you need that therapist or psychiatrist to tell you this and that, you know, and you kind of consider it. Whereas when you're in a good place, it suddenly seems so easy, you know? So I know now that it's sometimes easier to say than to, you know, to always actually practice it. But at the same time, I do know that, wow, I've been through that, whereas I was in a point that I really wanted to be, you know, I wanted to be taken into a clinic and being able to, you know, for him to fix me. Because I was like, there's something wrong with me. They need to lock me up and you know, fix this, because this is just, you can't live like this. But yeah, that's just when you're in that darkest spot ever, there seems like there's nothing, no way out of it. But then I guess talking to people does help. And I had the luck that I knew people that have actually been into the hospital and clinic for the exact same thing. Whereas it comes in different forms, but they also had anxiety attacks and all of these things going on. And yeah, I must say that did help, talking to them, you know, talking to people that did go through it. And now, right now, it's very hard for me to imagine how I felt, because right now I'm in the spot where
You're in
everything,
a better place.
yeah, I can, all of the questions that I'm asking myself, eventually I'll come up with an answer or something. Whereas I remember how I felt back then, and that was like, yeah, well, how am I ever, you know, nothing was really explainable. I didn't know who I was anymore, because I've always been I've always known myself very well, or I've known what I at least wanted, and I just felt very kind of confident about who I am. Whereas I was like, wow, if this can change, which was this one thing that I thought, you know, I will forever hold on to, because this is just me. And if that can be taken away because, you know, there's something, then what else can happen, you know, if you can truly lose yourself. But I guess that's also one of these things that you go through, and now I know, wow, I don't think I'll ever be able to go as low or be as low, because now from that I've learned a lot, you know.
Well, it's interesting to hear you talk about that from a different angle. If
Yeah.
you were to witness somebody else that's going through what you went through,
Yeah.
just to have an awareness of, this isn't just this person's crazy. They need to deal with something. I think with a lot of kids going through puberty, you
Yeah.
see the hormone change and attitudes. Because my
Yeah.
son's turning 14 this week, and so I'm seeing hormone changes that
Yeah.
is not normal for him.
Yeah.
But just keeping in mind that this isn't who this
Yeah.
person is. And I've told him before, and I've told other kids in that age, if you notice that you're feeling like you are secluded and by yourself, look around and see if you've shut yourself in your bedroom. Because a lot of times people will get where they feel really down and they're like, man, nobody wants to hang out with me. Nobody wants to be around me. But where are you? Have you shut yourself in your room away from the world so that nobody can talk to you? Because a lot of people are really bad about that. They feel bad, and so they think, keep everybody away, when they probably need somebody close to them to talk them through it, because it's really not as bad as you think it is, even.
True.
You know.
But the funny thing is, though, in my situation, which that's why I was so in such an uncertain place, because I remember being in a very good place. I was on top of the world at that time. I was living on my own. This was 1 year into college, so I wasn't a freshman anymore. I settled down. I made amazing friends. I was in a really good spot. Like, you know, beginning of college, everything was overwhelming, and kind of finding your routine or settling down can be difficult. But I've went through all of that, And I was in such a good place. I had a job, I had good friends, I had a university that I loved. And that's when it happened. And that's why I guess it went such down a rabbit hole, because I was like, how can this happen when everything is good around me right now? And the answer that I in the end got to, or my therapist told me, was that actually sometimes when our mind knows that we can handle it, it will bring up all of this trauma or things from the past, because your mind now feels like, hey, now you have time, or you can handle to process this. Because when you're in a survival mode, so when you're in a new place, things are exciting, or when you have all of these problems on your minds to focus on, even people in war, they're not thinking about, oh, is Jimmy feeling happy or not? No, they're thinking like, hey, someone is gonna shoot your head off.
We gotta stay alive.
You're in survival mode, so your mind is not focused on all of that. But if you're in a good place, and suddenly all of those things can just come up, which for me was, I never thought about that before it happened to me. I was like, and I did once pick up a book, which was ironically a month before it happened to me. And I read the first page, and it said that, she was in a yoga class, or Pilates, I don't remember. She had, a nice big mansion she lived in, great husband, 2 kids, golden retriever, everything she dreamed of. And then right in the middle of the yoga class, she just collapsed and started crying and having this panic attack. And that she was like, yeah, why does this happen to me? And I kind of read the first page and I just closed the book. I was like, put it back. And then a month later it happened to me, and I was like, oh, I gotta find this book. How did it end? How did she, what happened to it? I remember this was on my mind, like, wow, how,
Did you find the book?
I did, and I somehow didn't. I wasn't in the right mind later on to read the whole thing. I just kind of worked my way through it, but I still have it, and I should read it. But at that time, you're just so focused on yourself, and as I said, everything seems unexplainable. Everything seems also so hard and too difficult. The simplest tasks during the day seem like the biggest mountain climbs ever.
Depression, and I mean, it does sound like it was some form of depression.
Yeah.
It can be crippling.
Yeah.
Like, it just feels like you can't do anything.
Yeah. Yep. And you just, I was just, as I said, totally lost. I remember just simple things I would try to do. I was just, not capable of doing them, or I was just so chaotic that it was even dangerous. I remember I got in a scooter accident. I think I was at a gas station with my car. I noticed I was just, it was overflowing because I was just somewhere else with my mind. And I was like, well, I can't go out anymore because this is really unsafe even for me, So being in such a bad place, I guess. And I remember also trying very hard to make myself feel better. So I'd do the things that I would usually do. So I would go to the gym, I would go, really push myself, but I would just straight up bawl my eyes out in the middle of the gym. Or I would be, and hysterically crying. And I was like, where is this coming from? And then, my therapist did explain to me that, yeah, your body is so exhausted from everything that you shouldn't even be pushing yourself to do these things, because you're just, you're exhausted. Your body feels everything that's, it's all connected to your mind. So I had zero energy. So, yeah, that's hard to imagine now, but I do clearly remember everything how I was seeing back then. I'm a very independent person. I like to be on my own even sometimes. I don't need anyone around me. But back then I remember even being scared of like, oh, I really want people around me, I don't want to be alone. I want to have some distraction or whatever. But yeah, that was kind of you're, as we said, you're in a different spot in that moment. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. This was
Yeah.
fun.
It was.
And first international guest on the
First
podcast.
international
That's
guest.
exciting.
Yeah.
So, cool. Well, thanks for coming.
Yeah, boy.